Tonight on SuperNaturalSyndicate.com, amphibious anomalies.
We will learn why it's not a good idea to play in the street in a ghillie suit.
He's the terror that smiles in the night. He has a personality that will give any sane person a psychosis complex. He is the Grim Grinner.
What does Egypt's pyramids, the Bermuda Triangle, and Superman's Fortress of Solitude have in common? Find out tonight on this episode of SuperNaturalSyndicate.com. Stay tuned.
Hello and welcome to SuperNaturalSyndicate.com. My name is Zubs.
And I'm your host with the most crypto. Last week we covered an urban legend near my neck of the woods. Tonight, we go to an area close by Zub's hometown to speak of the Loveland frog monsters. Z-Man, what do you got to tell us about this?
Well, let me just set the story, because this is a very intriguing story.
Okay.
In May of 1955, on a lonely stretch of road that runs along the Miami River in Claremont County, just on the outskirts of a small town known as Loveland, Ohio, at approximately 3:30 a.m., a unnamed businessman claimed to have witnessed three bipedal quasi-reptilian entities congregating by the side of the road. The man pulled his car to the curb and observed these creatures for what he estimated to be about 3 minutes. During this time, he noticed that these strange beings stood between 3 and 4 feet tall, were covered with leathery skin, and had webbed hands and feet. Their most distinguishing characteristics were their frog-like heads, which this man claimed bore deep wrinkles where their hair should have been. Just as the man was about to steal away, one of these creatures suddenly held what the witnesses could only describe as a wand above his head. The anonymous source further claimed that sparks spewed out of the end of this device. He left post haste. Another story, at about 11 a.m. on March 3rd, 1972, nearly 17 years after the first report, a police officer, who understandably chose to remain anonymous, was traveling along Riverside Road heading toward Loveland when he saw something that would forever change his life. The officer claimed that he was driving slowly due to the substantial amount of ice on the road when he saw what looked like a dog by the curb. Suddenly, the animal darted in front of the cruiser, forcing the officer to slam on his brakes in order to avoid hitting the creature. Once the police cruiser came to a halt, its headlights fell upon the prone animal. At this point, the officer described something that seems literally too bizarre to be true. In the span of seconds, this crouched frog-like creature stood on 2 legs, stared back at the policeman, then scrambled over the guardrail and scurried down the embankment, finally disappearing into the Ohio River. The officer in question described this creature to be 3 to 4 feet tall and weighing in the area of 50 to 75 pounds. He also claims that its skin had a leathery texture and that the animal's features resembled those of a frog or lizard. Another officer investigated the scene later that evening. He saw no sign of the creature, but reported that there were distinct scratch marks on the guardrail where the animal crossed. The second sighting occurred 2 weeks later, while police officer Mark Matthews had an encounter of his own. According to the report, Officer Matthews, while driving into Loveland, spotted what he believed to be an injured animal laying on the pavement. Matthews climbed out of his cruiser with the intention of removing the carcass from the already ice-slicked road, when the creature abruptly lurched upwards in a crouched position. Taken back by the frogman's reptilian visage, Matthews unholstered his revolver and took shot at the creature, which then proceeded to hobble over to the side of the road and stepped over the guardrail, all while keeping a watchful eye on the trigger-happy officer. Matthews' frogman matched the first officer's description down to the last detail, with the exception of a tail, which was absent in earlier reports. In the years which have followed these events, Officer Matthews has retracted his statement. He now claims that the animal in question was nothing more than a large reptile which escaped from its owner. He further insists that the only reason he shot at the creature was to help confirm a fellow officer's story, a story of which was, of course, being met with predictable skepticism by their superiors. Whether or not Matthews' change of heart was inspired by ridicule or by fading memory, the fact remains that his testimony counter indicates his later retraction. Later that same year, an anonymous farmer reported sightings of four bizarre creatures while inspecting his fields, which were located adjacent to the Ohio River. The farmer claimed that the eyes of the frogmen were large and circular. Their skin was a pale greenish gray, and perhaps most disturbingly, that their mouths were wide and filled with sharp teeth. Thankfully, instead of attacking the poor man, the mini monsters stayed true to their form and made their escape back into the river, from where they have yet to be seen again.
Mm.
Arguably, one of the most intriguing aspects of this case is the apparent use of a technological device, the sparkling wand, and the earliest reported encounter which these creatures have been seen with. It has led some investigators to suggest that these beasts may not just be animals, but intelligent beings, possibly aliens. So what do you think, Crypto?
You know, as I hear you tell this story, I'm trying to confirm, where all these other stories are coming from. Now, I have never heard of half frog, half men people, but it leads me to believe that back in the days, the creature from the Black Lagoon, certain descriptions of the chupacabra, all of this seems to mash together. Our police officers, they're reputable people. They represent the government, they protect the public, and obviously, in some cases, they report on paranormal phenomenon. It would have been great if we had dash cams back in the 50s and 70s, because I would have loved to have seen what these things really look like.
Well, the thing is, though, some of the reports, well, not only did one police officer retract his statement, he said that, he didn't actually see frogmen. He saw a large reptile that was probably someone's pet. The only reason why he shot at it was, for proof.
Yeah,
Um, that is like a big black eye on this case. Also, in the statement he said, in his original statement, he said that the frogmen had a tail, which
yeah.
is not in any of the other sightings. And the farmer who saw the four Teenage Mutant Ninja Frogmen standing there, they had like really wide and large, sharp teeth. I don't know. It's interesting. I
Yeah.
don't know how I feel on it. Like I said, there's not a whole lot of evidence besides a scratch on the guardrail, which doesn't show much evidence at all.
Yeah, here's a piece from X Project magazine. Basically they raised the question: is the Loveland frog just a product of media hype? Every place that you will read about the Loveland frog, the famous story is similar, and the two credible unnamed police officers encountered a large bipedal frog-like creature near Loveland, Ohio. While preparing the Loveland frog entry for the X Project magazine, numerous credible sources were consulted. Despite the detailed and mass circulation of the story, it was brought to the editor's attention as being completely inaccurate and extra graded. In the email interview with retired police officer Mark Matthews, the second police officer that saw the bizarre creature back in March of 72, he said, there is absolutely nothing to the incident that relates to monsters or the paranormal. The entire thing has been habitually blown out of proportion. Mr. Matthews continues with his firsthand account of what he saw. And these are all quotes of what Officer Matthews had said. It was and is no monster. It was not leathery or had wet, matted fur. It was not 3 to 5 feet tall. It did not stand erect. The animal I saw was obviously some type of lizard that someone had as a pet and either got too large for its aquarium, escaped by accident, or simply got tired of it. It was at least 3 feet in length. I ran across the road and was probably blinded by my headlights. It presented no aggressive action. I'm going to stop right there because didn't he report all of these things was 3 to 5 feet tall and was leathery and this, and then he retracted his statement. Then he turns around and says it's a large lizard. Now, wasn't one of the stories about him being in a blizzard or was in wintertime? And I mean, wouldn't the lizard die in the snow?
Well, I know you've kept plenty of reptiles
Yeah, I do.
um,
I do
e-
keep reptiles.
and iguanas.
I mean, iguanas
Some
can get 6 feet long, but they have
some
to have
iguanas, right?
85. Yeah.
But they're not going to be able to survive in
No, man.
southern Ohio's winters. I mean, not even really the spring, man. They get too cold.
Right, exactly. I mean, I've got mine under heat lamps. They got to stay 85, 90 degrees. They live up in the trees. Totally a tropical animal.
Right.
Anyways, here's something else. Mr. Matthews pointed out more discrepancies in this famous story. He shot at the creature, as no one had believed his partner's sighting a few nights before. Despite being hit, the lizard still escaped, and Matthews suspected it either died of the wound or eventually died from the cold weather. The dramatic, commonly described scene of the lizard standing erect and stepping over the guardrail while keeping its watchful eyes on Officer Matthews, in fact, never happened, was what Mr. Matthews pointed out during this interview. Mr. Matthews may have explained away the mystery of his strange sighting 29 years ago, but what about the other numerous reports of a strange reptilian creature in the Loveland, Ohio area, such as the 25th of May of 1955, the sighting reported by an Ohio businessman who was driving along the Miami River in Loveland, Ohio. He claimed to have seen three strange bipedal creatures with frog like features and wrinkles on their heads instead of hair. According to his report, one of the creatures held a device that gave off sparks. Mrs. Darwin Johnson had a terrifying encounter of her own while swimming in the Ohio River in Evansville, Indiana, on the 21st of August, 1955. Something with a claw like hand under the water grabbed her knee. She struggled in vain as the thing dragged her underwater twice. She eventually fought off the unseen attacker with a friend's inner tube. The only evidence of
Wait,
Mrs. Yeah,
wait, what?
that's what I'm
So the
reading.
creature of the Black Lagoon came up, grabbed her, pulled her down twice, and she beat
Mhm.
it up with an inner tube.
Yeah, I don't think you can push an inner tube underwater.
I mean, you can like a foot or something. I
Gotta be,
mean,
gotta be really strong.
I mean, did it?
So
It
you're
never
splicing.
surfaced. So it never surfaced. She just felt something grabbing at her
I
and
guess
pulling
that's
her
it.
under.
It says the only evidence of Mrs. Johnson's ordeal were some scratches and some green palm print on her knee.
Well, I tell you what. Since giving all the evidence, 3 to 4 foot tall frogmen with electric wands over their heads, and reaching up from under the water and trying to pull you down. This all makes sense to me. I'm not gonna. I got a theory on this. I'm not gonna say it's aliens, but it's aliens.
And in other news, a man was killed while trying to create a Bigfoot sighting. In Kalispell, Montana, a man dressed in a military style ghillie suit and apparently trying to provoke reports of a Bigfoot sighting in northwest Montana was struck by two cars and killed, authorities said. The man was standing in the right hand lane of US Highway 93 south of Kalispell on Sunday night when he was hit by the first car, according to the Montana Highway Patrol. A second car then hit the man as he lay in the roadway, authorities said. Highway County officials identified the man as Randy Lee Tenley, 44, of Kalispell. Trooper Jim Schneider said motives were ascertained during interviews with friends, and alcohol may have been a factor, but investigators were awaiting tests. He was trying to make people think he was Sasquatch, so people would call in a Sasquatch sighting, Schneider told the Daily Interlake on Monday. You can't make it up. I haven't seen or heard of anything like this before. Obviously, his suit made it difficult for people to see him, the trooper stated. The ghillie suits are a type of full body clothing made to resemble heavy foliage and used to camouflage military snipers. Probably would have not been seen very well at all, is what the trooper told KECI television. Tinley was struck by two vehicles driven by two girls, ages 15 and 17, who were unable to stop in time. So, Zubs, what in the world? First of all, it's got to be dark outside. What in the world is a 15 and 17-year-old doing out at night in the middle of Montana? This is a rural area. well, more predominantly the 15-year-old because I don't know where you're from, but in my reality, people usually don't get their licenses until they're 16, right? Is that the law?
Well, just state by state, some of them can get
Permit?
their permit or whatnot.
Yeah.
But okay, don't worry. I'm okay. The major thing here, it's not about a 15-year-old girl driving a vehicle. It's about some dude standing on the side of the
Yeah.
road, running back and forth across the street
And
in a
he's
ghillie
drunk.
suit,
And
drunk.
he's got to be. Now let me tell you this. This is a funny little thing. This totally relates to the story. Back when I was 16, me and my buddies, we were. This was in southeast Indiana, and I dressed up in a ghillie suit because I'm 6'3", 200 some odd pounds, and I wait until a car gets ready to come by and it's dark outside. I run across the road like Bigfoot, like in the that famous video where he's kind of like lunging back
Yeah,
and
the
forth with
Gimlin
his arm.
footage or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, yeah. The Patterson Gimlin film, and I do that. I did that twice, and the third time I ran across the street and did it, I jump down into the ditch and I look and I see the car's brake lights come on. Then I see the red and blue lights flashing. He backs up real slow. And I don't know what the police officer, he was actually a county sheriff deputy. I don't know what he was thinking, but he had his searchlight on and he was driving backwards on the highway really slow. And then he turned around and pulled into my friend's driveway, and we were in a heavily wooded area. Their house is behind the woods. It's probably a good 2 or 3 acres of heavily wooded, area that we were all hiding in. And one of my friends is like, "I'm not going to get in trouble with the cops." He runs over there. Okay, I'm giving myself up. Where's all your buddies? There's about 3 or 4 of us that walked out, and we got, we did get yelled at. He said it did freak me out, but you guys can't be doing that. We
Well,
weren't
all I can
drinking or
say,
anything, but we were
sure you weren't.
kids.
All I can say is you are a genius. Because if I'm driving down the road and Bigfoot runs out in front of me, I know this is going to sound weird, but I'm probably going to speed up and try to hit him. Because then I would like instantly be famous for the guy who discovered Bigfoot by hitting him with my car.
There you go, man.
Yeah. A bit of advice for all you kids out there. Don't dress up in camouflage and run across the street. You'll
Yeah.
probably get hit by a car.
No, I'm telling you, I'm really liking these stories tonight.
Well, here's something you're really going to like. The Grim Grinner, or better known as the Grinning Man. Is he an alien, an apparition, or a tweaked out crackhead? So why does he freak people out so much? Well, eyewitnesses claim that the Grinning Man is a looming figure who stands well over 6 feet tall. His head is said to be devoid of any hair, and his dark beady eyes are nestled unnaturally far apart in his domed skull. Some people are so freaked out they can't remember whether he had any eyes or ears. The only thing that's consistent with this is his large, shark-like grin. Renowned paranormal investigator and Mothman Prophecies author John Keel is considered to be the first researcher to mention the creature, or more likely than not creatures, that have collectively come to be known as the Grinning Man. In his seminal tome on unnatural entities, The Complete Guide to Mysterious Beings, Keel discusses what is believed to be the first modern run-in with this peculiar entity. The encounter occurred in Elizabeth, New Jersey at approximately 9:45 p.m. on the night of October 11th, 1966. Two boys, Martin Munav and James Yankidis, were walking home along New Jersey and 4th Street, and they turned onto a road that ran adjacent to the elevated New Jersey Turnpike. There was a treacherously steep 30-foot slant running from the hectic turnpike above them all the way down to the tall wire fence that ran parallel to the route that Munav and Yankidis were walking. The decline on the other side of the fence was so steep that the boys had never seen anyone attempt to scale it, nor had they ever seen anyone on the opposite side of the rusted fence. But this night would prove to be an exception to the rule. Both Munav and Yankidis were nervous as they slipped in and out of the pools of light cast by street lamps above, as they had heard that a neighborhood woman had been chased by a tall green man earlier that evening in the same area. Little could the boys predict that they stopped to catch their breath a few moments later that their date with the unknown would be about to begin. It was Yanketus who first noticed the ominous humanoid figure standing in the thick scrub brush behind Manav on the opposite side of the fence. He appeared to be ignoring the boys and staring at the house across the road. Yanketus would later describe the smirking brute for both the police and Keel. He was the strangest guy we've ever seen. He was standing behind that fence. I don't know how he got there. He was the biggest man I ever saw. Yanketus wasted no time in alerting his unwary pal about the scary silhouette that was stationed behind him. Manav slowly turned and saw a huge figure clad in a green one-piece suit that seemed to be reflecting the streetlight above. Munav's account is in his report to the police. Jimmy nudged me and said, "Who's that guy standing behind you?" I looked around, and there he was, behind the fence, just standing there. He pivoted around and looked right at us. Then he grinned a big old grin. The two young men, evidently wise beyond their years, listened to their fight or flight instincts and wasted no time in exiting the scene before the eerie emerald apparition could scale the fence and take pursuit. Just 3 days after their unusual encounter, Keel arrived at the scene with UFO investigator James Mosley, and oddly enough, famed actor and paranormal enthusiast Chuck McCain. The boys were interviewed individually in the home of one George Smith, and according to Keel, gave identical accounts of the event. Keel described what Yanketus and Munav had told him. Mosley and McCain. The man was over 6 feet tall. They agreed and was dressed in a sparkling green coverall costume that shimmered and seemed to reflect the streetlights. There was a wide black belt around his waist. He had a very dark complexion and little round eyes, real beady, set far apart. They could not remember seeing any hair, ears, or nose on this figure. McCain was a solidly built actor who stood 6'2", and both boys insisted that the grinning man was not only taller than a TV star, but much broader as well. This would make him an imposing figure indeed. Keel and his fellow investigators went to the site of the encounter, wondering whether or not the menacing man behind the fence might actually have been a stranded motorist. Upon inspection of the scene, however, Keel and his crew concluded that the incline was not only too sharp to easily traverse, especially at night, but that any sane person with car trouble stuck behind a high fence would have called out for help rather than leer crazily. It wasn't long before the boys' bizarre tale spread throughout the neighborhood, and folks began to speculate that this so-called grinning man might be associated with a UFO sighting that had occurred at exactly the same time just 40 miles north of Elizabeth near a DuPont explosives factory outside Pompton Lakes. The initial eyewitnesses to this event were a police officer and his wife. So you've just heard the part one of the grinning man story. So let's make a list of what we got here. We got a story of a lady being chased down the street by a green guy.
Yeah.
And then we've got a story of
We got two kids.
Yeah, running down the street from a very tall guy with no ears, nose, or hair, wearing a sparkling green jumpsuit.
Yeah, and then we got the actor.
Yeah, and the actor, well, he was investigating, and he was taller and broader than the actor, and the actor was supposed to be a pretty decently sized, 6'2", I guess broad chested. So, and then possible connections to a UFO.
Okay, so at this point, here's what I think it is. I think it's Spawn.
Okay, would you care to elaborate on that? Because I could say it's Spider-Man.
Okay. Spawn, like, if anyone's watched a movie or seen the comics, you see him, he looks like he's a burnt guy from hell. So he's got no hair, no ears, no nose. Now, if you've ever seen, like, the evil spawns in the movie, like, they're kind of greenish and they're kind of reptilian looking. They're big and muscular and broad, and they got that evil smile and the beady little eyes, and that's what I think it is. So far, that's what these guys have seen as Spawn.
Oh, okay. So, I guess, but
What do you think it is?
It sounds more like it could be like an alien of some sort, maybe
Yeah.
possibly a reptilian.
Hmm.
They don't talk about the skin. They just say he's dark, but he
Yeah.
wears a green sparkling jumpsuit. And disco wasn't invented for like another at least 4 years. So
Yeah.
that rules out that possibility. But I don't know. This just is weird. I guess aliens had really weird fashion sense at the time.
Yeah. Well, this goes
Um,
back to an earlier episode where I said there were like all these different species of aliens, and this could be one of them.
yeah, I mean we don't know. I mean they could be shapeshifters for all we know.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Just seems
I thought
just a
those were a myth.
well, okay. I mean technically we that's all we cover is like
Oh,
urban legends, myths. I mean yeah, we're looking for facts and there's some unexplained stuff, but I mean you get into it. I mean I don't know. I mean if aliens are a possibility and Bigfoot's a possibility, why can't shapeshifters be?
yeah, that's true. I guess so. I mean, all
But
these
anyway,
crazy stories got to start from somewhere.
and I mean, I'm not saying that these kids made it up or whatever because I mean we'll hear
Well,
next episode more stories on this, but just the what we've heard so far, I mean it sounded
I mean,
more
there's
if
multiple accounts, you know.
yeah what we've heard so far and the UFO connection, if it is really a connection,
Yeah,
it could maybe it's a stranded alien trying to
and I
pick
mean,
his
you
ride
know,
up or something
the
or
the author who wrote that book, the Mothman Prophecies, John Keel, he's wrote a lot of things, and a lot of his stuff is not totally fantasy, myth, fictional.
no no hey
He all
actually
of his, yeah,
I will recommend the Mothman Prophecies movie. We're not getting paid to endorse that, but I will endorse it because it's such a good, thrilling movie.
it's based off a true story.
Yeah, and Mothman was one of my favorite paranormal stories as a kid growing up. We actually had a book, paranormal book in the library at my elementary school. And you should just read on the Mothman story and all the accounts and get so
Yeah,
freaked out.
it's crazy. And I grew up close to where that bridge between Ohio and West Virginia over the Ohio River. Where I was born, it was probably about an hour or two drive.
Yeah,
So, and when I was a child, that's where I grew up in that area. So I'm familiar with, the real life tragedy of the bridge falling down and then
right.
everybody seeing the Mothman. So,
I don't know. Maybe you could have got a visit from Indrid Cold. Now for our next story, we report live to Crypto on the S&S Studios submarine. Crypto, take it away.
hey there, pyramids of glass found in the Bermuda Triangle. That's actually where I'm heading right now in the studio under the sea. This story is really cool, and I'm just going to start right in. These strange underwater pyramid structures at the depth of up to 2,000 meters were identified with the help of a sonar, according to oceanographer Dr. Verlag Meyer. Studies of other structures like the Unaguni in modern-day Japan have allowed scientists to determine that the two giant pyramids, apparently made of something like thick glass, are really impressive. Each of them is larger than the pyramid of Cheops in Egypt. Recently, American and French scientists, as well as other countries that are conducting surveys in an area of the seabed of the Bermuda Triangle, claim to have found a pyramid standing upright on the seabed that has never been discovered. The length of the base of the pyramid reaches over 300 meters, 200 meters in height, and a distance from base to the tip of the pyramid about 100 meters above the sea floor. It's about 3 football fields long, 2 football fields high, and preliminary results show this structure to be made of glass or a glass-like crystal material, and it is entirely smooth, partially translucent. When talking about the size, this newly rediscovered pyramid is larger in scale than the pyramids of ancient Egypt. On top of the pyramid, there are 2 very large holes. Seawater at high speed move through the second hole, and therefore raging waves roll by, forming a giant vortex that makes the water around this cause a massive surge waves and mist on the sea surface. New discovery makes scientists wonder if this is having an effect on passing boats and planes and could be the reason for all the mysterious surroundings in the area. So if you imagine, you've got this giant device creating a vortex down in the Bermuda Triangle on the seabed, boats and things go over it and they get sucked in. So there are several Western scholars who argue that the pyramid on the seabed may have been initially made on the mainland, after which a devastating earthquake struck and changed the landscape completely. Other scientists argue that a few hundred years ago, the waters of the Bermuda Triangle area may have been as one cornerstone activity of the people of Atlantis, and pyramids on the sea floor may be a supply warehouse for them. Perhaps it is related to the underwater race of humanoids discovered in Washington state in 2004, the so-called aqua ape beings. And that's something that we'll cover later on in another episode. A more detailed study over time will give results that are difficult to imagine. Scientists have processed all of the data and concluded that the surface is perfectly smooth for it to look like glass or ice. The size of the pyramids are nearly 3 times the size of the pyramids of Cheops. The pyramids in Egypt that they're referring to are only about 50 yards high or so, but it's really big. This news was sensational and was discussed at a conference in Florida and even reported to local Florida newspapers. The journalists present in it have a lot of pictures and high-resolution computerized data which show 3-dimensional pyramids perfectly smooth without being covered with a surface free of a debris or algae or cracks, so it doesn't show any signs of age. There is also a suspicion that the Bermuda Triangle and the area where the pyramid was supposedly located may be some sort of holy ground that is being protected by the fabled Atlanteans, that whatever crosses over that location is considered an offering. Other hypotheses that the pyramid can attract and collect cosmic rays from the so-called energy field or the quantum vacuum of space, that this may be used as an Atlantean power plant or whatever was around at the time. So that kind of might answer your airplane thing. If all of these, the space radiation going down in there, the quantum vacuum, the energy field, messing with the plane's instruments, it changes the magnetic field in that area that could make them go down, since everything runs on computers. So with the mystery still surrounding behind the Egyptian pyramids and the fact that the pyramidal structures seem to be found in almost all ancient cultures, it's going to be hard to tell for certain the origin of the structure or if it truly exists. Now, in 1977, a mysterious discovery was made on the floor of the Atlantic concerning an unknown technology. A 650-foot pyramid was mysteriously lit up with sparkling white water surrounding it that turned deep green, and shocking contrast to the dark black waters at that depth. The discovery was photographed on an expedition off of the Cay Sal, which is an area in the Bermuda Triangle. Another huge pyramid in 10,000 feet of Atlantic water was reported to have been found with a pulsating crystal on top of it by Tony Bennett's expedition. The group also found an opaque crystal tablet in there. When a light was beamed through it, mysterious inscriptions became invisible. More underwater pyramids were found off Central America, Yucatan, and Louisiana, where domes were found in the Straits of Florida. A marble Greek-style building was found between Florida and Cuba. And what about the column that radiated energy Dr. Zink found in the Bahamas? And Zink also brought up other artifacts from his dives over Atlantis, and he was interviewed by Mind International agent Steve Frostberg about those occurrences. So other pyramids have been explored by Dr. Ray Brown on the seafloor of the Bahamas in 1970. Brown was accompanied by 4 divers who were also found roads, domes, rectangular buildings, all under the water, unidentified metallic instruments, and statue holding a mysterious crystal containing a miniature pyramid within it. The metal devices and crystals were taken to Florida for analysis at a university. What was discovered was that the crystal amplified energy that passed through it. Perhaps this is the reason for the glass-like pyramid. So, and also there's a YouTube video put on our site. It's about the History Channel. It's way back when Leonard Nimoy was the host, and it talks about Dr. Ray Brown's story. He's interviewed and he talks about his occurrence there. So I think this is really cool, that they found all this stuff. What do you think it is, Zubs?
This is definitely cool. I don't know. It just don't know what this is. It's just like some type of crystal pyramid underground, and they're saying that it has like vortexes. It causes vortexes in water, which could explain why ships get pulled under, and
The plane's
it sends
instruments
out
malfunction.
magnetic rays shooting up or out of it or something. It's
Yeah.
like the Atlanteans before they died, they forgot to shut off their security system or something. I mean,
Now, I mean, in the video, I listened to it a couple weeks ago, and he talks about swimming into the pyramid himself while he's in his scuba suit, and he goes into the pyramid and he sees this podium, and this podium, on top of the podium, there's two bronze hands holding this circular crystal that looks to have a small pyramid like made within it. And then he swam up to the top of the pyramid, and he said there was a gold rod that came directly down from the center, down over top of the crystal that was being held in the bronze hands on the podium. So he wasn't able to move the gold or move anything else out of place, but he was able to take the crystal, and in that video it shows the crystal. And he also shows how it manipulates metal, and when you places metal over it, the metal becomes weightless. It's really weird. Now, if it
is this
landed,
like an anti-gravity type field or something?
yeah,
Or?
it totally ignores gravity and just starts going or like up. The metal when he passes over the field, going straight up and down. Yeah, you'll see it in the video. But and then he starts talking about. There's a video that I watched where it talks about the Atlanteans were a real people, and the place was real, and it was on land at one time or something to that effect, that maybe these crystals were the center of their power, and they used these crystal pyramids with these power to navigate, or maybe they abused their powers or something. I don't know.
Well, one thing about the Atlanteans, I mean, we've all heard the story of Atlantis, and it sounds kind of crazy or just some like myth or legend. So often we find evidence that human civilization is older than what we thought.
Yeah.
I think the Sumerians were the oldest civilization there was, and then suddenly we discover, remains of a city that's older than the Sumerians. And the thing about the story of Atlantis, every culture in the world has the story of Atlantis. It's
Yeah.
like some powerful nation out at sea on an island, and they had advanced technology, and either a natural disaster or something they caused with abusing their power or whatever destroyed their city and sank it to the bottom of the sea.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's a possibility. I mean, and with these crystal pyramids underwater, I mean, it might not actually be Atlantis, but it's shows some type of intelligent design because
Right.
of their
Exactly.
shape, of the hands
Yeah.
carved under there. I mean, that's not natural erosion.
Right.
So, and actually, a triangle is not natural erosion either.
No.
There can be rectangles or almost like step-like with erosion of waves in the ocean,
Right.
but this is at the bottom of the ocean.
It was
It's not.
completely smooth.
Yeah, it's completely smooth. It's
Had no
not.
damage.
It's not near a
Nowhere.
shore or anything like that.
No.
So it's in the middle of the ocean, at the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah.
It shows that there's some type of intelligence that designed this. We don't
Right.
have that technology, so I mean, it
I
could
mean,
be.
I think about it this way, like in South America and civilizations all over the world where there's these giant buildings and these glyphs and all these weird, devices and things that have been, that they find. I'm leaning more towards an extraterrestrial presence in the past, for all these civilizations.
Or could it possibly be that at one point humans had a more advanced culture and then they blew themselves up and
That's
we've got to
possible.
rebuild?
Yeah.
So, and then one thing I knew you mentioned, you said you would cover in a future episode, aquatic apes, which
Yeah.
sounds so interesting.
And that about wraps it up for this episode of SuperNaturalSyndicate.com. I want to thank our audience for sticking with us tonight. I know this is a little bit longer than our previous episodes, but we're going to try and stay with 2 longer episodes to give you to the month. And you can check those out at supernaturalsyndicate.com. You can like us and check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/supernatural syndicate. And also our YouTube website, which is youtube.com/Zubs Crypto.
If you'd like to leave feedback or tell us about a story you want read on the air, you can contact us at zubs@supernaturalsyndicate.com or crypto@supernaturalsyndicate.com. Well, I'm Zubs.
And I'm Crypto, and we'll see you on the other side.